I can't believe it's coming to an end either. Actually started, it's been on screens for 24 years, and I started shooting 25 years ago. That's a quarter of a century. And the cliches abound. Where has the time gone?
For 25 years, Agatha Christie's Poirot wasn't just a detective show. It was a life quietly unfolding behind perfect suits, polished shoes, and a perfectly trimmed mustache. At the center of it was David Suchet, an actor so committed to Hercule Poirot that he carried a notebook of 93 character traits for over 2 decades. But what happens when a man spends so long becoming someone else that saying goodbye starts to feel like a real death? When the final episode, Curtain, finally arrived, this wasn't just the ending of a television series. It was the conclusion of a relationship between actor and character that had lasted longer than many marriages. What followed? The vault, the war, the murder, the rosary, and the bowler hat became one of the most devastating endings television has ever filmed. The hat he couldn't put down. Before we get to the ending itself, there's a detail that tells you everything about what this show actually was. Hercule Poirot first appeared on ITV screens on January 8, 1989. David Suchet stepped into the role of the fussy, precise, slightly vain Belgian detective, and he didn't just play the character. He built him from scratch, carefully, over decades. From the very beginning of the series, Suchet carried a small notebook. In it, he had written down 93 character traits, taken directly from Agatha Christie's novels.
Christie novels, but their relationship I really think is at its best here in this book. And then lastly, the final reveal recontextualizes everything.
The way Poirot tipped waiters, the way he disliked tomatoes, the way he held his cutlery, the way he straightened objects on tables without thinking about it. Every detail was in that notebook, and Suchet added to it every single time he found something new in the books. Most actors research a role for a few weeks. Suchet researched his for a quarter century. There's a specific interview where he talks about how Poirot ate, not as a performance choice, as a character truth. Christie had written that Poirot preferred square eggs, counted the toast points on his breakfast plate, and treated a badly arranged meal as a personal offense. Suchet didn't use those details when they were convenient. He used them every single time, whether the camera caught it or not. That's not acting. That's something closer to possession. He also made himself a promise at the start of the run. He would complete every single Christie story featuring Poirot. Every novel, every short story, even the stage play, Black Coffee. Over the course of 25 years, he kept that promise. He is the only actor who has ever done this, probably the only one who ever will. By the time the show ended, Suchet had spent more time inside the head of Hercule Poirot than most people spend getting to know their own siblings. The character wasn't a role he returned to seasonally. It was a relationship he maintained, tended, and deepened for the better part of his adult life. So when the final episode aired on November 13, 2013, and someone asked Suchet what he wanted to take from the set out of everything, across 25 years of props and costumes and carefully dressed rooms, he asked for the bowler hat, not a script, not a framed photograph, the hat. He said in interviews he can't look at it for long. It sits somewhere in his home, a small, dark, formal object that once belonged to a man who didn't technically exist, and somehow that makes it harder to look at, not easier. That detail matters because it tells you the ending of this show isn't just a TV finale. It's the conclusion of something a real person poured a real life into. And what Christie wrote, what Suchet filmed, it was never designed to let you walk away clean. The vault, the blitz, the obituary. To understand why Curtain hits the way it does, you need to know where it came from. Agatha Christie wrote the novel in the early 1940s.
Agatha Christie seemed to be writing. There was this one section we saw where she'd written 14 pages or so. It looked literally like she'd then stuck a line through each section very quickly, and then the next section was this perfectly written out section without crossings out, without mistakes.
London was being bombed. Her husband Max was stationed in the Middle East. Her own flat was hit twice, once badly enough that she had to leave. She had no certainty she would survive the war. And she wanted Poirot to have an ending, a real one, in case she didn't live to write it herself. That's the emotional condition this story was born in. Not a comfortable study, not a book deal. A woman sitting with the genuine possibility of her own death, deciding that her most famous creation deserved a proper goodbye before the bombs made that impossible. She finished the manuscript and locked it in a bank vault. She gave the rights to her daughter Rosalind as a form of insurance. If Christie died, Rosalind would have a final Poirot novel to publish. That vault held the ending of Hercule Poirot for over 30 years, 3 decades. The world changed completely around it. The war ended, television arrived, entire generations grew up, and that manuscript sat untouched in the dark. Christie survived the war. She lived into her 80s. But she kept it locked away because she knew what it contained, and she wasn't sure the world was ready for it. Or perhaps she wasn't ready to let him go. The book she had written as a goodbye had become something she couldn't quite bring herself to release, while she was still alive to feel the loss of it. Curtain was finally published in September 1975. Christie was 84 and in failing health. She died in January 1976.
Then, in modern times, we have Agatha Christie, Queen of Crime, living in the town, who was here from 1934 until she died in 1976.
Just 4 months after her most famous character finally got his ending in print. She barely outlived him. The response was extraordinary. The New York Times ran a front-page obituary for Hercule Poirot on August 6, 1975, before the book had even officially released. It is the only time in the paper's history that a fictional character has received that honor. A made-up Belgian with a wax mustache and a precise part in his hair got a real obituary on the front page of the most important newspaper in the world. Piece was written seriously, treated as a genuine loss, and ran alongside coverage of actual world events. That has never happened before. It has never happened since. Before David Suchet ever put on the costume, this character already carried the kind of cultural weight that made hardened journalists set aside the rules of what is real and what isn't. Poirot's death mattered to people who had never met him and never could, and they said so publicly, in print on the front page. Suchet knew all of this when he took the role. He had read the novels. He knew what Curtain contained. He knew that one day, if the show ran long enough, he would have to film it. And when ITV finally commissioned the final 5 episodes in 2013, he made an unusual request. He asked to film Curtain first, not last, first. He told Digital Spy directly, "One of the reasons we had to do Curtain first, I lost 2 stone. It was extraordinary preparing for the end. Not a pleasant thing to do, to know that I'm going to die." He spent 2 days in the studio filming Poirot's death. Then he pulled himself together and spent the next several months shooting 4 other episodes, playing the lively, dapper, energetic Poirot of earlier years. Full costume, full mustache, the whole performance, as if none of it had happened yet. He filmed the funeral first. Then he had to go back and pretend the person was still alive. There is something almost unbearable about that as a working condition. Most actors finish a role and then grieve it. Suchet grieved it first, on camera in full detail, and then had to keep going. The man who whispers. Here is what actually happens in Curtain. Poirot returns to Styles' the country house in Essex, where he and Hastings solved their very first case together, back in the mysterious affair at Styles. The show had adapted that story as the opener of Series 3 in 1990. Coming back to it here is deliberate. The same house, the same walls, a different version of the same 2 men, older, slower, carrying everything the years between have cost them. He is in a wheelchair. His hair is dyed an absurd shade of black to hide the gray. His mustache is thinner. His hands shake. The man who once moved through rooms like he owned them now has to be pushed through them. Hastings, recently widowed, comes when he's called. He always does. That loyalty, uncomplicated, unquestioning, is one of the things Poirot has counted on his entire life. And it is exactly what makes Hastings vulnerable to what's coming. Poirot tells him there is a murderer at Styles. He calls this person X. He won't say who. He only says that X has been connected to 5 previous deaths and another one is coming. The killer is Stephen Norton. Bird-watching, gray-haired, soft-spoken with a slight stammer. He faints at the sight of blood. He looks like the last person in any room you would worry about. He has never killed anyone with his own hands. He doesn't need to. Norton is an Iago, the kind of villain who is more dangerous than any murderer with a weapon, because he operates entirely inside the minds of other people. He finds the hidden things, the old bitterness someone never quite let go of, the jealousy they buried under years of being polite, the resentment that has been sitting quietly in the dark. And then he whispers. He doesn't instruct, he suggests. He plants a small idea and steps back and watches as an ordinary person. A decent person, in most cases, follows it to somewhere they can never come back from. No fingerprints, no evidence, no motive a jury could understand or a lawyer could argue. The law has no language for what Norton does. Poirot has spent his entire career on a single belief, that order, justice, and the little gray cells will always find a way, that the law exists for a reason, that the moment any man, however well-intentioned, starts deciding for himself who deserves to die, something irreversible breaks in the world. He turned in his own client once. When the evidence demanded it, he refused to bend for love, money, friendship, or anything else. For 30 years that line held. It was not just a professional standard. It was the architecture of who he was. And then he picks up a pistol, walks into Norton's room while the man is asleep, shoots him through the forehead, and arranges it to look like a suicide. Price he paid willingly. Stop for a moment and sit with what that means. This is not a moment of passion. There is no rage in it, no panic, no split-second decision made under pressure. Poirot thinks through every part of this with full clarity. He has been thinking it through for weeks, possibly longer. He knows what Norton is. He knows the law cannot reach him. And he knows with the same precise, methodical intelligence he has applied to every case for 30 years exactly what he is going to do about it. He knows what it will cost him, not just his life, in his own theology, his soul. This matters because Poirot's faith is not background detail. The show built it into the character quietly over decades, not through speeches, but through small, consistent moments. The rosary he keeps close, the way he crosses himself before something difficult, the sense of divine order that runs underneath his belief in human order. Like a foundation beneath a foundation, he has always believed that justice exists in 2 places, in the law and in God's hands. For 30 years he trusted both. He believes in judgment. He believes, genuinely and without question, that what he is about to do will condemn him, that there will be an accounting, and he will not be able to argue his way out of it. He is not a man who thinks God grades on a curve, and he does it anyway. After killing Norton, Poirot returns to his room. On his nightstand is his medication amyl nitrite, a small ampule that heart patients in the 1940s would crush and inhale during an angina attack. It would have saved his life that night. It had saved his life many nights before. He doesn't take it. He looks at it, and he reaches past it, picks up his rosary and waits. He is not confused. He is not too weak to reach for the medicine. He chooses not to. That distinction is everything. His last words whispered into the dark are "Forgive me, forgive." Not a declaration, not a speech. 2 words, repeated to a God he has every reason to believe is listening, and every reason to fear is not feeling merciful. That is how he goes, alone, rosary in one hand, an unused dose of medicine inches from the other. Now here is the layer most people miss the first time they watch it. The most haunting part of the finale isn't Poirot's death. It's what Norton had already done to Hastings, recently widowed, terrified for his daughter, stripped of the steadiness that usually protects him. Norton had worked on him carefully, quietly, feeding the fear and the anger until Hastings nearly poisoned a man he believed was sleeping with her. He almost crossed a line he could never uncross. He almost became something he would have spent the rest of his life unable to forgive himself for. Poirot, half dead in a wheelchair, was the only thing standing between his oldest friend and that Norton doesn't kill people. He hollows them out and hands them back to themselves. So when Poirot executes him, it is not abstract justice or a philosophical position. It is a man making a specific trade, his own soul for Hastings, his afterlife for his friends. Hastings doesn't know any of this while it's happening. He finds out only when he reads the letter. Poirot left the one delivered in voiceover at the very end, in Suchet's voice, after Poirot is already in the ground. By the time Hastings understands what was done for him, there is no one left to thank. What the camera did. The visual choices in Curtain are worth talking about because they are doing a great deal of the work. When Poirot first appears in the episode, he is wheeled into a frame that deliberately mirrors his very first entrance in the mysterious affair at Styles, which the show adapted as the opener of Series 3 back in 1990. The same staircase, the same hall, the same wallpaper. More or less Hastings stands in roughly the same spot. Hugh Fraser, who played Hastings for the entire 25-year run, is given a long camera hold on his face right at that moment, just long enough for you to see him register what 23 years of fictional life have done to his friend. Fraser and Suchet built that bond on screen and off. By the time they shot the reunion at Styles, both men were essentially saying goodbye to each other through the characters. The distance between actor and role had narrowed to almost nothing. Then there is the death scene itself. The makeup team removed the mustache. After 70 episodes and dozens of fake mustaches glued to Suchet's upper lip, they showed Poirot without it for the final scene. The effect is genuinely shocking. He looks naked, vulnerable, whatever vanity. Poirot had built around his appearance. The careful grooming, the precise appearance is gone. He is just an old man in a bed. Suchet had lost 2 stone of body weight to look the part. He had been preparing for over a year to film exactly that scene. There are no stunt performers in the death sequence, no effects, just an actor who did everything he could to show you what it looks like when a man decides to die. And then there is the final shot of the entire series. After Poirot dies, after the voiceover, after Hastings reads the letter, the camera holds on Suchet's face, and he looks directly into the lens. Not at Hastings, not at a prop, at you, at everyone who ever watched. It is a fourth wall break, but it is also something else. It is an acknowledgement. The actor and the production step outside the story for 1 second to say, something ended here. I see me. And then he's gone. Suchet described it in a Gold Derby interview from late 2013 as saying goodbye to a dear, dear friend. He was insistent that this wasn't theatrical. I've lived with this man for 25 years, he said. The line between grief and performance had stopped meaning anything. David Suchet kept the bowler hat. He said he can't quite bring himself to look at it for long. It sits somewhere in his home, a small, dark, formal circle of fabric that used to belong to a man who didn't really exist. That's the thing about Curtain. It doesn't give you closure, it gives you the truth. That the most principled man in detective fiction reached the end of his life and found that his principles weren't enough, that doing the right thing and doing the good thing were not the same, and that the only person who could save him was himself, which is exactly why he chose not to. Some endings stay with you. This one lives in you. And if your chest does that thing, when someone mentions Poirot in passing, now you know why.